Today is Tuesday, June the 25th, 2024, and this is the Daily Article Podcast. Today's article is written by Dr. Jim Denison and narrated by Chris Elkins of the Denison Forum. Callie Weems was a nurse and the 23-year-old mother of a 10-month-old daughter named Ivy. According to Callie's mother, Ivy was a constant source of entertainment and wonder to the new mom. Then came last Friday when a gunman opened fire at a store in Fordyce, Arkansas. Callie died helping to save the life of another victim. Arkansas State Police Director Mike Hager said of her, instead of fleeing the store, she stopped to render aid in one of the most selfless acts I've ever seen. Her mother explained Callie's motivation. God gave her the strength to run into that store to help. She was strong enough in her faith that if something happened, she knew where she was going, and that was paradise. Yesterday, in response to ongoing clergy abuse scandals, we explored perhaps the hardest question Christians must face. Why does our all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful Father sometimes allow innocent victims to suffer at the hands of people who purport to be ministers and leaders in His church? We admitted that this horrific issue often causes non-Christians to question the validity and relevance of our faith in such a God. As we respond today, let's begin with this fact. If believers must account for the evil perpetrated by Christians, skeptics must account for the sacrificial deeds of believers like Callie Weems. Such deeds dot the landscape of Christian history, from the founding of hospitals and universities to the abolition of slavery and the benevolence of Christians in giving to charitable causes. However, a skeptic can reply in several ways. Christians are taught that such giving will benefit us with future rewards, as from Matthew 6:20, we lay up for ourselves treasures in heaven. Believers who serve others are often recognized in this life and rewarded accordingly. And finally, an evolutionist might suggest that we are intrinsically motivated toward altruism to bring gain, prevent punishment, and reduce the averse arousal that comes from observing others in need. But then we learn of people like Callie Weems, who responded instinctively and sacrificially to a crisis despite all she risked. We read of Christians such as Maximilian Kolbe, who died in a starvation bunker at Auschwitz after volunteering to take the place of a man with a family. And we are encouraged to believe that Christ in you, the hope of glory, in Colossians 1 verse 27, really does transform sinners into new creations, as stated in 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17, who reflect the sacrificial character of Christ from Romans 8:29 to the glory of God proclaimed in 1 Corinthians 10 verse 31. What then of Christians whose evil acts harm victims made by God in His image, as stated in Genesis 1:27, and beloved by His Son, declared in Romans 5 verse 8? As we saw yesterday, God sometimes, but not always, protects people from evils perpetrated by the misuse of human freedom. This is just one dimension of the larger fact that the Lord does not always do what it seems His character as the God who is love should require Him to do. In such cases, we have a binary choice. We can decide that He is not who His Word claims Him to be, despite evidence of His transformational love, or we can decide that He is who His Word claims Him to be, despite innocent suffering in our fallen world. Each decision requires faith to believe, despite arguments to the contrary. It may be that Pascal's wager can help us here. The mathematical and philosophical genius wrote, "Let us weigh the gain and the loss of wagering that God is. Let us examine these two chances. If you gain all. If you lose nothing. Wager then, without hesitation, that God is." Now, let's add this. A relationship with God, like any other relationship, requires a commitment that transcends evidence and becomes self-validating. You cannot prove that you should go to a particular school, trust a particular friend, or marry a particular person until you do. You examine the evidence to be sure, but then you must make a decision that becomes self-affirming. In the same way, when we choose to trust God even though we don't understand Him, our trust positions us to receive His healing presence in ways we cannot prove, but can truly experience. This happened to me on the Sea of Galilee a few weeks after our son's cancer diagnosis. I was teaching our study group from Matthew 14, where Jesus walked on the stormy water to his disciples. When our boat stopped at the place where this miracle occurred, I invited our group to name their storm and trust in our omnipotent Lord. Then I did what I asked them to do, placing our son in the hands of God's Son. When I did, I can testify with Philippians 4, verse 7, that the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, flooded my mind and my heart. I did not know that he would be healed, but I knew somehow that God would do whatever is best. This is not always how he answers my prayer. Sometimes I need to pray with the father of the demon-possessed son in Mark 9, verse 24, I believe, help my unbelief. But when I chose to step beyond what my finite, fallen mind can comprehend and trust the omniscience and omnipotence of my Father, I have found that, to paraphrase Kierkegaard, God is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. What storm will you trust to Him today?
As we approach the final day of Denison Forum's 15-year anniversary summer campaign on July 12th, we invite you to make a pivotal contribution, one that will help produce this podcast and other Christ-centered content that transforms lives. This is your chance to be a part of a movement that shapes our culture through a biblical lens, so don't wait. Visit supportdf.org today to help Denison Forum launch into another 15 years of impactful ministry. July 12th is the deadline to reach the $550,000 summer campaign goal, so please give now at supportdf.org. Thank you.